It was a quiet morning at Molly's Diner, the kind of small-town place where the smell of fresh coffee and bacon fills the air before sunrise. The regulars were there, the truckers, the old couples, and the tired waitress with a smile that never faded no matter how early it was. But at the corner booth, sitting alone, was George Miller, an 81-year-old war veteran with silver hair and a worn army jacket, sipping his black coffee like he did every day. The world had forgotten his name, but once upon a time, men had saluted him. That morning, though, the peace didn't last. The bell over the diner door jingled sharply, and in walked three men, loud, drunk, and clearly looking for trouble. The tallest of them, a young thug with tattoos crawling up his neck, sneered as he scanned the room. His eyes landed on George, sitting quietly by the window, his trembling hand holding a coffee cup. The thug laughed to his buddies. "Look at this old man," he said loudly enough for the whole diner to hear. "What's he gonna do if I take his seat? Salute me." People turned away, pretending not to notice. No one wanted trouble, but George didn't flinch. He simply looked up, his faded blue eyes calm but firm, and said softly, "Son, respect costs nothing." That's when it happened. The thug slammed his hand on the table, leaned in close, and slapped George across the face hard. The sound echoed in the diner, a mix of shock and disbelief freezing everyone in place. George didn't raise his hand, didn't even look angry. He just stared at the young man with a kind of quiet sadness that could pierce a soul. The waitress gasped. One of the truckers started to stand but hesitated. The thug's friends were big and nobody wanted to get hurt. George just adjusted his jacket and whispered, "I fought so men like you could be free." If you believe kindness, courage, and second chances still matter in this world, please like this video, share it with someone who needs faith in humanity, and subscribe to our channel Heart Tales for more real-life stories that touch your soul. The thug mocked George, laughing cruelly. "Oh yeah, what war did you lose?" he sneered. George didn't reply. He just turned back to his coffee, his hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline but his dignity intact. Moments later, the diner door opened again. This time, the sound of rumbling engines outside followed, deep, thunderous, unmistakable. The kind that made people look up from their meals. A dozen motorcycles had pulled into the parking lot. The waitress froze, eyes wide. She whispered to the cook, "Those are the Hell's Angels." The thug rolled his eyes. "Great, more freaks," he muttered. But when the door swung open again, silence fell like a heavy curtain. The man who stepped inside was tall, broad, and wore a black leather vest with the Hell's Angels patch stitched across the back. His beard was grizzled, his arms tattooed with memories of roads traveled and battles fought. He looked around the diner, scanning every face, and then his eyes landed on the old man sitting by the window. The biker's face changed instantly. His hardened expression softened, his steps quickened, and before anyone could process it, he was kneeling beside George. "Dad," he whispered. The thug blinked. "Wait, what?" The diner went utterly silent. Every breath seemed to hang in the air. The biker, his name was Jack Miller, had just come back into town after months on the road. He was known by his brothers in the club as Grizz, a man who didn't speak much but whose loyalty was legend. Few knew his story. Fewer still knew that his father was the quiet old man who came to Molly's Diner every morning at 7. Jack looked at the red mark on his father's cheek, then at the thug who stood frozen a few feet away. The diner walls seemed to close in with tension. Jack's jaw tightened. "Who did this?" he asked softly. His voice was low, too calm, too controlled. No one answered, but the waitress glanced nervously at the thug. Jack followed her eyes. The thug tried to puff himself up. "Hey man, it was just a joke." Jack stepped forward, close enough for the thug to feel the weight of every mile he'd ever ridden. "You think it's funny to hit an old man," he said quietly. The other bikers began filing in, their heavy boots thudding against the floor, filling the diner with leather and silence. The thug's friends backed toward the door, but Jack raised a hand. No one leaves. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It carried authority born not from anger, but from pain. Then slowly he turned back to his father. "You okay, Dad?" George gave a faint smile. "I've seen worse, but I didn't think I'd live to see my son walk in like this." Jack's eyes glistened. "You shouldn't have to, old man." The diner was dead quiet except for the hum of the coffee machine. The thug was pale now, his arrogance fading fast. Jack stared at him not with fury, but with the kind of look that makes a man question everything he's ever done. "You ever serve your country?" Jack asked. "And no," the thug stammered. "Didn't think so," Jack said. "Because if you did, you'd know what respect means." The thug swallowed hard. "Look, man, I didn't know he was your—" "You shouldn't need to know," Jack interrupted. "You respect people because it's right, not because someone might hit you back." Outside, the other bikers waited by their bikes, watching through the glass. They knew Jack. They'd seen him angry before, but this was different. This wasn't about pride. This was about love. Jack turned to the waitress. "You okay, sweetheart?" She nodded, trembling slightly. Then Jack did something no one expected. He looked back at the thug, stepped closer, and said, "You've got two choices, kid. You can walk out of here and pretend this didn't happen, or you can make it right." The thug frowned. "Make it right how?" Jack pointed to George. "Apologize, not because I said so, but because you owe it to yourself to learn something before life teaches you the hard way." The room held its breath. The thug looked at the old man, his shame heavy in his chest. For the first time in years, someone had stood up to him, not with fists, but with truth. He swallowed, his voice cracking. "I'm sorry, sir. I was wrong." George studied him quietly, then nodded. "Son," he said, "you've got a lot of years left to do better. Start now." Jack placed a firm hand on the thug's shoulder, not violently, just enough to ground him. "He means it," he said. "Don't waste that chance." The thug nodded, tears pricking his eyes. Then he and his friends backed out of the diner slowly, their arrogance stripped away, replaced by something new, humility. When the door closed, Jack turned back to his father. The tension melted, and he smiled faintly. "You never told me you came here every morning," he said. George chuckled softly. "I didn't want to bother your club meetings." Jack laughed, the sound rough but warm. "The club can wait. Breakfast with you sounds better." They sat down together, side by side in the booth. The waitress brought fresh coffee and pancakes on the house. The other customers relaxed, whispers rippling quietly through the room. But what happened next was what no one expected. The thug came back, alone. He stepped through the door with his head bowed and walked straight to George's table. The diner hushed again. "I'm serious about what I said," he muttered. "I want to make it right. My mom always said my granddad fought in the war too. Guess I forgot what that means." George smiled kindly. "Then don't forget again." Jack nodded approvingly. "You've got guts coming back, kid. Keep that. Just point it the right way." The thug left again, this time different. A small spark of redemption flickered in his eyes. As the morning sunlight streamed through the diner windows, George reached across the table and clasped his son's hand. "You know," he said, "I used to worry about you. All those roads, all those fights. But today I think I understand. You found your own kind of family out there." Jack's eyes softened. "Yeah, but I never forgot my first one." George chuckled. "You've got your mother's stubbornness." "And your heart," Jack said quietly. The two men sat there for hours, sharing memories, laughter, and silence. The diner slowly filled again, and life went on, but something about that place changed forever. The story of the old veteran and the biker son spread through the town like wildfire. People started treating George differently, not out of pity, but respect. Even the thug came back a few more times, sometimes sitting with George for coffee, sometimes helping the waitress sweep up after hours. He told her once, "That old man, he's tougher than any fighter I've met. And that biker, he made me realize being strong isn't about hitting. It's about standing up for what's right. In time, Jack moved back home. The Hells Angels chapter he led became known for charity rides and veteran support. Every year on Veterans Day, they'd roll through town loud, proud, and united, stopping at Molly's Diner for breakfast with George. The same spot, the same coffee, the same quiet pride. And every time someone new asked about the story behind the old man and the biker with the angel's patch, the waitress would smile and say, "That's what happens when love and respect show up at the same table." If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness, loyalty, and second chances still matter, please like this video, subscribe to Heart Tales, and share it with someone who believes in standing up for what's right. Speech balloon before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe one act of kindness can change a person's life? Because sometimes, all it takes is one moment of courage to turn a slap into a story the world never forgets.